Hey, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here with my cat, Baron, who's very vocal today, and also with the books that I ended up reading in January. As you might have guessed from the thumbnail video, or the thumbnail picture on this video, I read an obnoxious amount of books this month. January felt so fucking long, and also I read a gazillion fucking books. Let's get into the stats here. This month I read 13 books and one book I DNF'd, so 14 altogether. I read about 200 pages of the one I DNF'd, so I really tried to stick with it. I'll get to it, okay? The genres I read were horror. There were 6 horror books, 5 fantasy books, 2 science fiction books, and a book that I'd say probably dystopian, but it had a lot of interesting elements in it, and it could span a lot of different genres. Maybe paranormal? Probably that, actually, more than anything else. Anyway, I read 5,669 pages, which is about 182 pages a day. Oh my god. If I look at my goal this year of reading 35,000 pages, I am left with 29,331 pages to go after this month. 8 of these books were books I previously owned, so they were off my TBR. I did not count the ones I reread, because I reread 4 books this month. So the oldest book I read this year was published in 1993. Then I had a 2010 book, a 2012 book, a 2013 book, a 2015 book, a 2016 book, 2 2017 books, 2 2019 books, and 4 2020 books. My average rating this month was 3.7, which, I don't know. I mean, you'll see when I talk about these books, but it was like, I either really liked books this month or I really did not like them. So like that rating seems weird when I think about it. 12 of these books were novels, 2 were novellas, 13 were considered adult, and 1 was considered young adult. 8 of them were physical, 4 of them were audiobooks, 2 were ebooks. I read a 5-star prediction for this month, which was Salvaged, not a 5-star read. And I read a book for Buzzwordathon. The buzzword for this month was dreams, so I picked Strange the Dreamer, and I really liked that book. So, on to the books that I read. I have a lap cat. See his tail? Poor kitty. I'll start with the book that I DNF'd this month. That was The Burning God by RF Kuang. I was listening to the audiobook because I do not have a copy of it yet, but I've read the first 2 books, and this is the 3rd and final book, so it's like, you know, if I can check this out from the library, then I can finish up the series, and that would be great. But I didn't catch the stride, I guess. I liked the first book pretty well. I didn't like the second one as much, but I thought it was okay, and I was hoping that this 3rd one would really catch my attention again, you know, as we're coming to the conclusion of the story. I listened to what would be about 200 pages of it, and I just, like, could not care. So I was like, I'm not, you know, if I'm not wanting to read this, I'm not gonna read it. And I decided to be done with it. The first book is about a girl named Rin, and this is kind of like an alternate history, like historical fiction fantasy book. So they're living in somewhere that I haven't read the history of it, but I know that the author was going for like this historical Chinese thing, like these events that happened in China, but she added like fantasy to them, which is so cool. And I liked the first one. It was about Rin, and she is a shaman, but she does not know it yet. That's not a spoiler. That's in the synopsis, like on the back of the book. But she gets into this really elite military school, and that's where she learns that she is a shaman. And shamans are like not really something that exists anymore, and there's like a lot of stigma, and people are scared of her powers, and there's not really anybody to train her, really. So yeah, and then as she's in this military school, a war breaks out. So it's like perfect because she just finished up military school. So that's, you know, where the series goes from there. And like I said, I liked the first book pretty well. Didn't really like the second one as much. And yeah, I think I'm just done with that series, and that's okay. I didn't rate this one at all because I didn't finish it because I thought it was bad. The writing's great, and I know many people would like this. It was just to the point where I just didn't really care about the characters, I guess. Next is a book that I received from the author. This is The Pineys by Tony DiGerolamo. This was a fairly short book, and it was kind of like a horror comedy. It involves this guy who like breaks down on the side of the road, and he ends up meeting these people who are hunting what they call devils. And it's like the Jersey Devil, but the Jersey Devil isn't just like one being. It's like all these beings that are like infected with this thing. So they're like a family of devil hunters, and they have like all these cousins, and it's kind of kooky. And this was really fast paced. It was funny, like I said. I think the one problem I had with it was that it very much felt like somebody who writes comics writes this, because when you're reading a comic, the pictures tell the action for you. And so in this book, it was like there wasn't a lot of narrative with exactly what these people were doing. A lot of it was more like dialogue of the characters telling us what they're going to do instead of the narrator showing us what the characters are doing. So it felt like there was a lot of dialogue to slog through. But it was really fast paced. It was funny. That's the beginning to a series. So I really liked the take on how like there is not just like one Jersey Devil. There are like multiple devils, and they can do different things, and they can like shapeshift into people. So it's like they have to know the secret password to know that this person's not a devil trying to trick you into thinking that it's this person. It was kooky. It was funny. I guess next I should talk about if I can even hold all three of these up together. So there's this series that I wanted to revisit because I could get all three of the books from my library. I could borrow all three of the audiobooks, and there is like, it's not exactly a companion coming out in February, but it is like a part of the series in the same storyline, but with different characters as the main characters. So I was like, I just want to freshen up on this. I'll get the audiobooks. So I listened to the first one on audiobook. This is the Court of Thorns and Roses series by Sarah J Maas, which is like a fantasy romance series. And I listened to this first one, and it was like, okay. And then I got to the second one, and I was like, this is just taking me too long. Like I had this like fervent need to consume this. And like, these are rereads for me. So I didn't think it would be like that, but I just like compulsively needed to read these books. And so I ended up zipping through them. They are fucking monsters. I know this one's like 640 pages, and I know this one looks shorter because they use like thinner pages, but this is like over 700 pages. So I just like had to read them over again, and it's so goofy because when I'm done, I mean, this is only the second time I've read them, but each time I feel like I've experienced like a breakup or a loss or something. It's like this hole in my heart, which is not like me, really. Like, I don't need happy endings, and I don't need everybody to live and all that sort of stuff. But like, for some reason, these like goofy fantasy romance books about a girl who is taken by fairies, kind of like Beauty and the Beast, and like that for some reason just really like breaks me up inside. I don't know. I really love this series. It's so goofy. I can't wait to read the next one. All of these were 5-star books. I'm not gonna, I mean, I don't think I need to go through what the second and third are about because it's a series, but like I said, the first one is about this girl. She shoots a wolf in the forest. She finds out it's a fairy, so she gets in big trouble because there's this treaty between the humans and the fairies. Like, they can't hurt each other. So like the ruler of the court that fairy belongs to comes and takes the girl, and she has to live with him in his giant castle, and he's very moody, and The first one's basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then the series expands from there, and it's just wonderful and not for everybody. And I do really have a problem with the fact that in these books the like men are like 5,000 years old. Just kidding, it's like 400 years old, and then there's like this 19-year-old girl that they fall in love with, and that seems so fucking weird to me still, but like I still really like the series. So this is actually the first book I read this month. This is Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King, and this has a really simple premise. This is about Dolores Claiborne, and she is brought in to be interrogated after her employer dies. Dolores is working as a caretaker for an elderly woman, and the elderly woman dies, and people think it's a little bit suspicious. So Dolores is brought in, and she like tells the tale of what happened between her and her employer Vera, and also this rumor that's gone around this small town about how Dolores might have killed her husband. So it is told completely by Dolores. It's like this giant monologue. Some of the, I don't know, the whole book's written in this like accent, this like Maine accent, this New Englander accent, and like I've never been further than like Tennessee in the United States. I've never been more east than that. So I've never heard this in real life. I don't think this is how people really talk. So that was kind of weird, but also I don't know, because like I said, I haven't really been that far east, but that was a little bit kind of weird, I think, but I still ended up really liking this. I'm really glad that I picked it up. It was so quick, and just like the relationship between Dolores and Vera was so good. Then I picked up Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I've read one of Laini Taylor's books before. It was another series that she did. I think it was like Daughter of Something in Bone, I think, or Something in Blood. Daughter of something. And I thought it was pretty good, but I didn't continue the series after the first book. But I really did like Laini's writing, so I got my hands on Strange the Dreamer. This is about a young man named Laszlo who is a librarian, and he gets chosen to go to this city called Weep that people think just like doesn't exist anymore. Like they haven't heard anything from Weep in years and years and years, to the point where it's like nobody ever goes there. Nobody speaks of it even really. But he's been really fascinated by this lore that he's found in the library about Weep, and he gets the chance to go see if it's real. This is a really slow-paced story, and Laini Taylor's writing is just really lyrical and beautiful. It's like reading a gorgeous symphony. Not something I would think I would typically go for, especially because it is, pretty slow-paced. But it's like everything she writes is so deliberate, and everything feels really integral to the story, and I can't wait to read the second book. Then I read Salvaged by Madeleine Roux. This is considered an adult book, but I really think that the writing just feels really young adult when I read it. And I know Madeleine Roux usually writes young adult books. There was some content in here that like wouldn't normally be in a young adult book, but I felt like the writing still lent its hand more toward a young adult audience for the most part. This is a sci-fi horror book about a young woman named Rosalind, and she is kind of like a space janitor. She does like space crime scene cleanup, and so like that premise sounds so cool. I love it, but not much of that is in this book, unfortunately. She works for this company in space, and she gets called out to the ship where they call it like a code blue. Like there is no life on this ship. So they assume that the crew is dead, and they get there and the crew is not dead. The crew has been infected by this fungus, this like iridescent, like bioluminescent fungus, and it causes them to have like this hive mind kind of, where they all kind of share their thoughts and they're all kind of controlled by this fungus. It reminds me of, I think it's called cordyceps, the fungus that infects like insects and small animals and causes them to crawl up high on like trees in the rainforest, and then the fungus like fruits from their bodies and infects other critters with its spores. It's really interesting. It like, you know, controls their bodies for a short amount of time. Horrifying and interesting. I really ended up not liking this a whole ton. Rosalind is trying to stop drinking alcohol, so they talk about her having alcohol withdrawal, but I just don't think that this is something that the author read up on. It didn't feel like, because Rosalind's alcohol withdrawal is like, man, wish I had a drink, kind of have a headache. And it's like, I don't know, maybe this is because it's something that runs in my family, alcoholism, and like I've seen this firsthand. Like, people have to go to the fucking hospital sometimes, even if they're withdrawing from alcohol. Like, it can cause you to die. So it just felt very blasé. It was like how a kid thinks alcohol withdrawal is, like how a teenager does. I think we just got off on the wrong foot with that, and then I just didn't feel like the plot was, it just didn't live up to my expectations. I didn't really care about anything that happened to the characters. I didn't feel connected to the main character. I just didn't really care. I didn't care. I didn't care. And it was a bummer because I had high hopes for that. The premise is so interesting. And like I mean, I say this every time I talk about a book that I didn't particularly like. This is just my opinion. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't pick it up if it sounds interesting to you. This one just didn't end up being what I wanted, which is really a bummer. Space fungus, like how cool is that? Okay, this was another reread for me. This is The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. This has more books in the series coming out next month, or I think at the end of this month, possibly. It's like the end of this month already. So I've read the first book. I have number 2 and 3, and then I have number 4 coming in the mail. So it's like I should probably reread the first book so I can read the series. I'm so glad that I ended up still liking this, because otherwise I would have bought 3 other books in this series and like done well with them. This is a really interesting book that spans so many genres. It's kind of dystopian, it's kind of steampunky, it's kind of paranormal, it's kind of like sci-fi-ish, and oh my gosh, it's just, the world building in this I thought was so good. So this is about a young woman named Paige, and she is part of like kind of a gang. Like, this gives me big Peaky Blinders vibes, and it's like not too distant future, but it feels also kind of Victorian in some ways. This takes place in London, and Paige is part of this like group of other people who have occult powers. So there are lots of different powers that people can have. The power to like send images to somebody else's head, the power to control angels or poltergeists, the power to read cards, stuff like that. But Paige, she has this power where her like spirit can leave her body, and she can like get into the heads of other people and possess them. And it's so cool. So all this occult stuff is like highly illegal in this London. It's like super illegal. If they catch you, they take you to this place called the Tower, and you have to stay there until they execute you, basically. So it's all very secretive. She can't let anybody outside of like her group of people that she works with know about this. But one night she gets caught and she gets brought to the Tower. The Tower is not what she expects. And she gets put on this train and sent to this other place outside of London. And it's like this city where all these people who can use occult powers are being held captive by this like race of human-like things, not exactly human, but they look pretty human, and they're called the Refame, and they also have occult powers. So that's like a very, I could go on if you can't tell. I could go on because the story's so rich and there's so much to it. It's, yeah. It's one that I've seen is really polarizing. Either you really like it or you really don't, it seems. Either you think it's just fine or you're like, eh. But I liked it a lot. I think it's so creative and I'm glad that I read it. And I'm really excited to embark on a journey with the other books in this series. So this is Snow by Ronald Malfi. This is a horror book that takes place in the winter. So I was reading it for all those wintry horror vibes. And in that way, it did not disappoint. This is about a guy named Todd Curry, and he is trying to get to Chicago, I think, for Christmas. No, he's in Chicago. He's trying to get to Iowa for Christmas. My mistake. So his flight is canceled, and him and a couple other people who are supposed to be on this flight decide to rent a car. There is a snowstorm, which is why his flight was canceled. On their way to Iowa, they stop because they see like a man on the side of the road, and this guy's saying that he's lost his daughter, and they try to help him find his daughter, but it's all really strange, very eerie. The guy just like is not acting right. So that kind of gets resolved, but they need gas. They go on to the next town, and it is like a ghost town, and there's like all these weird fires everywhere. There's like abandoned cars everywhere, and I think that's all I'm going to tell you about this. I thought this was pretty creative, but all in all, I didn't love it. I read it. It was pretty fast-paced and interesting, but I just felt like there was a lot of running around in this. There was action and there was gore, but I didn't really care for the characters too much in this, and I feel like that is kind of integral to a plot where characters are trying to survive, you know? I didn't think it was bad, but I didn't love it. Next is another audiobook I listened to this month. This was Lakewood by Megan Giddings. This was one of the nominees for the horror award on Goodreads, and I found it on Scribd, or is it Scribed? I don't fucking know. I always call it Scribd, but like I was thinking about it and I was like, wouldn't Scribed make more sense because Scribe is like, you know, has to do with writing and reading. I don't know. I'm gonna call it Scribd because that's what I want to call it. So I found this on Scribd and I listened to it. So this was a really interesting book about a young woman named Lena, and she is trying to make some money. Her mom has some health issues and like some mental health issues, which makes her kind of unable to take care of herself. And Lena's like young, she's like college age, so she does not have a ton of resources, a ton of ways to help her mom. She doesn't have that money to get her mom the medical attention that her mom needs, and she gets the opportunity to sign up for these like medical, like these science trials, these medical trials, and she jumps at it because the money that they offer is just excellent. That is like the plot of this book. It's not very long. It feels very fast-paced, and it feels like reading a dream. I think the author so perfectly captured these weird, nefarious, bad feelings that happens to Lena, and this dilemma that Lena's in where it's like, you know, she could probably get out of these trials, but then that money is gonna dry up, and what's she gonna do to help her mom? And it was really good. It felt like there was like a weight on my chest when I was reading this. It was claustrophobic, and I really thought this was a great book. I loved the audio narration, and it was just really great. It was really great. I would definitely recommend this book. Okay, last book I'm gonna go real in depth on. This is To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This is a giant space opera science fiction book, and I don't think I really liked it. I'm really bummed about it because this is the first thing that Christopher Paolini has come out with since he wrote his Aragon series years and years ago. And that series is just, I know some people think it's not that great, but I read it like as it was coming out, and it really helped me in life, I think. It helped me escape like where I was at that time in my life, you know what I mean? I was a young kid, and that series really helped me escape. So I was so psyched to see that he was coming out with something, and I was a little hesitant because I saw it was science fiction, and I'm like, I'm not used to you writing that, but he was like, it's okay, you're gonna like this. This book is a chunker. It's almost 900 pages. This is about a woman named Kira, and she is like a xenobiologist. So she studies like alien life forms that are not from planet Earth. She's in space, and her and the crew that she's with pick up these signals from something on a planet they're near. So they go to investigate it, and she just wants to look at it really quick. So she gets into it, and it's like this, almost like this room, and there's something at the center, like this artifact, and she touches it and does two things. It like sends off this beacon, and it also like forms into this, like an exoskeleton almost, but one that she cannot really control. One that she cannot get off of her, and it's like sentient. This beacon that it like, the signal that it sends off also like signals all these aliens to come into the solar system, and they might not be nice. They might be not good. So it's like she's dealing with this weird suit that she can't control and she can't get off her body, and like, is she going to become a science experiment? Are people gonna kill her for this? And also, these aliens are attacking humanity. There were parts that I liked about this. I felt that it was very creative with the different kinds of people and aliens in this book, but this was a very long book, and it was almost 900 pages, and I did not particularly like the main character in this. She felt very flat to me. She felt like a pancake. It was like reading a pancake doing things, and like, pancakes are not that interesting, even if they have sentient exoskeletons on them. They're still not that interesting. So like, I don't want to read about a pancake doing shit for 900 pages. It just felt so fucking long. I was lucky to be able to get a copy of the audiobook, because after reading it for a while, I was like, I am not gonna finish this. I'm not gonna do it. So yeah, the audiobook really helped me deal with that. I also might not be the target audience for this, because this was very much a space opera. Like, it was heavy science fiction, and I might, reading this now, I'm like, maybe that's not for me. I don't know if it's just this book or if it is me and like what I like and don't like. Such a beautiful book visually. However, I just don't think I liked it that much. I also ended up reading Swamp Monster Massacre on my Kindle. This was by Hunter Shea, and I've read one of Hunter Shea's books before, Creature, and this was much different than Creature. But not in a way I disliked. Creature was very like full of emotion, and like very much a story where the author is trying to get you to connect to these characters. Swamp Monster Massacre is like the exact opposite of that. It is exactly what the title tells you. It is about a swamp monster massacre. It's about this guy named Rooster, who gets into some trouble with like a drug lord's son, kind of, somebody involved with the cartel, and he's like fleeing these guys who want to kill him, and he like hijacks this airboat tour boat full of people and crashes the boat in the swamp, and then there are these skunk apes that come and attack everybody. It doesn't make you think. It just like tells you to buckle in and like pull your safety bar down, and then you're there for the ride. And I appreciated that because it felt like what I needed at that point in my month when I had been reading lots of fucking books and not liking some of them. And this one was just really enjoyable. It was gory and kind of absurd, and I liked it. You could really read it in one sitting, I think. Last but not least, I read Antioch by Jessica Leonard. This was a new release. It came out just a couple months ago. This is a horror book, and I did a full in-depth review of it. So I'm not going to tell you much about it, but I will leave the link to that down below in case you want to hear more about it. This is about a woman named Bess. She lives in a very small town called Antioch, and there have been these murders. There's also been a disappearance that has not exactly been linked to the murders, but Bess thinks she receives a message that tells her that this disappearance is connected to the murders, and she wants to investigate it herself, kind of. Didn't love this book. Liked the idea of it though. So Jessica Leonard is somebody I would definitely read another book by. Does that make sense? I'd read another of Jessica Leonard's books if and when she writes one. But this one was not my favorite. Full in-depth review in the description of this video. And I think that's it. Holy shit. Oh my god. I like had to make a list because otherwise I was not going to remember all these books I read. But I think I got through them all. So there it is. Whew. I'm gonna take a couple days off reading and let my brain rest a little bit and maybe like do some mindless activities like play Stardew Valley. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought about them. Let me know what your favorite book you read this month was. I'd love to hear. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you guys later. Goodbye!